Jesus told us through the apostles to beware of certain things. And I've noticed that we don't always pay attention to that. Let me read some scripture to you, and it'll give you a good understanding of these bewares, if you please. In Matthew 16, it says, when the disciples reached the other side, now that is the other side of the Sea of Galilee, they had forgotten to bring any bread. They didn't have lunch that time. And Jesus said to them, watch and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. You know what they thought? Oh, we didn't bring any bread, and Jesus is mad at us. But Jesus said, oh, you of little faith, why are you discussing among yourselves the fact that you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive? Do you not remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000 and how many baskets you gathered? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000 and how many baskets you gathered? How is it that you fail to understand that I did not speak about bread? Well, you know, these guys, well, it was easy for us to misunderstand. We're apostles. I did not speak about bread. Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Then they understood that he did not tell them to beware of the leaven of bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. There was one more to whom he said, about whom he said to beware. And let me go ahead and read to you from Luke chapter 12 and the first 3 verses of that. It says, in the meantime, when the many thousands of the multitude were gathered together, insomuch that they trod upon one another, and began to say unto his disciples, first of all, Jesus did, beware ye of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. But there is nothing covered up that shall not be revealed, and hid which shall not be known. So whatever you've said in darkness shall be heard in the light, and what you have spoken in the ear in the inner chambers shall be proclaimed upon the housetop. Now God added to the Pharisees and the Sadducees the leaven of Herod. So there were 3 warnings relative to leaven that he told us to beware. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, and Herod. Now, what might this mean? Why them? Well, first of all, this was Jesus saying there are 3 things I want you to be aware of that you should never put your trust in. Never let this be the thing that, that causes you to rise, so to speak, which leaven did. So be careful, beware of that kind of leaven. Now, folks, I'm going to, for just a few moments here, rattle our cages. You ready for this? The Pharisees were the conservatives. The Sadducees were the liberals. The Herodians were the bureaucrats or the government. And Jesus is saying, do not depend on them. Beware of the leaven of thinking that by being a conservative, that is the thing and is the godly thing that produces power, because it isn't. And don't let thinking, well, I'm liberal and so I have more freedom and the like, be the thing that you produces your power. And don't think that if I could just get the government to do the, if I just had influence with the government, then I can make life better. Now, why do I bring this up? Is it obvious? We do depend on the conservatives, and some depend on the liberals, and some depend on the government. And we think if we can just straighten out our government, everything will be fine. And so we want to throw the rascals out and Lo and behold, new rascals got in. Been doing that for years. It doesn't matter who they are. They're all rascals. There is coming a time when the government is going to be on Jesus' shoulders. Now think of what it will be like. In fact, I'm going to talk to you before long about Job. Job was the government in his day. And when I tell you how he governed, you will be so excited you'll think, why don't we have this today? And I think it was why God was proud of him, you know. He's proud of Job. Hey, you've seen my servant Job. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself and talk too much about him, except to say, how many years of government have we been around, and how many problems have been solved, and how many new problems are created? But I have friends who are desperate to just deal with the government, and I think they have eaten of the leaven of Herod. And I have friends who feel that you cannot be saved unless you're a conservative. And they have eaten of the leaven of the Pharisees. And I have friends who think that the only way that you can ever achieve anything is by being a liberal. And they have eaten of the leaven of the Sadducees. Because you see, in Jesus' day, the Pharisees were the conservatives. And oh, by the way, they controlled the government. Things haven't changed. The Sadducees were the liberals. And an interesting thing happened because the Sadducees were willing to negotiate with Rome. The Romans made them choose a chief priest who was a Sadducee. Well, the conservatives weren't going to have that, and so they said, okay, he's just the guy for Rome. So they then would elect another chief priest who was one of their kind, and that's the one that they recognized. It was called a dysfunctional government back then. Folks, things haven't changed. Now, you will notice this especially when Jesus was tried, there were two chief priests. And that gives you the clue that well, one of them was a Sadducee and the other one was a Pharisee. And Jesus wasn't in favor of any of that. He said, he's in essence saying, look, my kingdom is vastly different. It's not like other kingdoms. My kingdom is bigger than any of the organizations of mankind. In fact, boy, I've got to read this to you. He says in Luke chapter 16, he says, the things that are esteemed of men or highly valued by men are an abomination in God's eyes. Now chew on that for a bit. What do we esteem? Well, we sure do like honor, you know, we like to win, we like to be considered top stuff or really important, you know, and we like to have influence. We like for people to take note of our Rolex. Oh, mine isn't there. I don't even wear a watch. I don't like watches. We like things like that. We really like to have the nicest house on the block at least, and a Corvette to drive around. We esteem those things. And God says, that's, to me, an abomination. Now, this is scary. And I think it's in the Jesus style. I wrote a creed for Christian sportsmen. I believe that's where it is. Yeah, I think it's in the study guide of the Jesus style. And I did that because the church that I served, when I got there, they were so much into inter-church sports. They had a trophy case full. I opened one closet and I had to jump back because there were all of these trophies falling out on me. They were into winning. I heard a couple of my men talking about, oh, remember when we played such and such, you know, and one of the guys came out, we broke his leg, and then they sent his brother out, we broke his leg too. And I'm going, what? Well, there was a softball team, and it was led by a certain chap, and after I became pastor there, I went to the games, and I finally called him in, and I said, what I'm teaching you about Jesus, I'm not seeing happen on that field. And if it doesn't begin to happen, I'm going to completely shut down the sports program here. You wouldn't dare, because they were big in that. So I watched for 2 or 3 more games, and I called him in, and I said, as of this moment, we no longer have a sports program. Well, we lost some people because that was the only reason they came. I mean, they weren't brand new Christians either. They should have known. But then, as I taught about the nature of Jesus, finally one of the men, who was an elder type, came to me and he says, I think I know what you want. I said, I think you do. Can I start it up again? Yes, you can. So they started with a softball team. Now, here were some of the rules. Everybody that comes out gets to play, not just the best guys. And if you've got the bases loaded, and you can win if they just get a hit, but there's a guy that's never had a hit, but he's on the team, is coming up to bat. You got to let him bat. And I said, I want our team to be a team that other people want to play because of the way we treat them. And I said, I want to tell you something else that I want to have go on. If they call you safe, but you know you were out, I want you to argue that with the referee. Sir, really, I was out. We lost every game that season. But everybody had fun. And our team was voted the best sportsman in the whole church leagues in Southern California. People would come to our church just to sit, and I would say, I have not met you before. Who are you? Well, we work with the league thing, and we just wanted to come and see what you're teaching that produced this in these people, you know. Because I said to them, I want you to play as if Jesus was on your team, and you want to give him glory. And I want you to also play as if he were on the other team, and you never want to damage him. The next year, we won the championship, but we didn't gloat. You know, it was just, hey, way to go, guys. Because I have learned that things that are esteemed of men are an abomination to God. Chew on that so that your mind goes toward those things that are, well, look at it this way. Every year they honor, you know, or at least they list the top 100 rich people, you know. They will list the top most influential people, but they never have a list, because it can't be done, of the greatest servants. I was once a part of a group called Servant Society. I was the token preacher. This was a group of guys, and they invited me on because of the Jesus style. They liked it and thought I could be part of it, even though I was a preacher. But they were outstanding industrialists. They had phone numbers of people I never dreamed I'd ever meet, you know, home phone numbers of those people. And their goal, I told them, I kept telling them, you can't do this. This isn't the way it works. But they, oh yeah, we can do it. But eventually, you know, it all came to an end. But one of the things they thought about doing was honoring some servants, having, you know, like an annual award for a best servant. Now tell me how you're going to do that. I mean, if they're the best servant, they don't want you to necessarily know, you know, because the things that we esteem are an abomination to God, and to esteem one of them suddenly destroys what they're trying to do. Now chew on that for a while. The things that we highly value, God says that's an abomination to me. Well, with that, I say, amen.